N. Sreekumar is an assistant professor of philosophy in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. He is a gold medalist for MA Philosophy from the Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam. He did his MPhil and PhD in Philosophy from the Central University of Hyderabad and specializes in the areas of philosophy of language, continental philosophy and hermeneutics. He has been into the academic profession since 1995 and is taught in Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi, Kerala and BITS Pilani, Rajasthan before joining the IIT Madras in 2003. Dr. Sreekumar has published articles in various journals and has presented papers in national and international seminars. Some of the courses he offers include European Philosophy, Contemporary German Philosophy, Introduction to Indian Philosophy, Philosophical Hermeneutics, Philosophy and Critical Theory, and Philosophy of Language.
Welcome to the UGC lecture series in philosophy on Phenomenology and Existentialism, part 17. In this episode, we will be covering the following topics: need for a new method. So, we will be largely concerned about the question of methodology or method, phenomenological method, which consists of a process called bracketing. In the previous episodes, we have seen the importance of isolating essences or things given into consciousness directly. So, how to isolate these essences so that we will get the essences directly as they are given to the consciousness, so that every other discipline, particularly sciences, can be constructed built upon these essences. So, this will be a foundational for all sciences and all discipline, and for Husserl phenomenology is a foundational discipline, it is a presuppositionless philosophy. So, that is the relevance of the question of method. Immanent pure phenomena in consciousness. This is again linked with the concept of method, the pure phenomena that is given to consciousness, which I have just described. So, these are the major issues which we are going to discuss today. Now, the question is, why do we need a new method? Because philosophers, in the history of philosophy, if we examine, we could see that there are a lot of philosophers who have come up with methods, different methods. Descartes, for example, is one philosopher who comes, the moment we talk about methodology in philosophy, it is the name of Descartes which comes to the forefront, who discussed about a methodology, a particular method. Then again, if you go back, you have Plato, who discussed dialectical method to arrive at truth. So, why a new method which is different from all this? This is the question which we have to address. And here Husserl refers to the notion of natural attitude, a concept which we have already discussed in some of the previous episodes. So, it is very important for phenomenology to overcome this natural attitude, which is prevalent in all our knowledge. So, this methodology or phenomenological method aims at overcoming this natural attitude. Natural attitude, see, we will see that it considers consciousness to be one thing among many in a real world. So, if you examine the world, we could see various things in this world, objects, trees, flowers, and many things in this world. And as far as the natural attitude is concerned, it will consider even consciousness as one among the objects. You can have a scientific study of consciousness where consciousness is an object. So, you objectify consciousness. So, this is a typical example for holding natural attitude, because your scientific conceptualization also belongs to the fold of natural attitude to a certain extent. Now, I revisit Descartes here briefly, because the question of method, we cannot avoid discussing Cartesian methodology. But what Descartes actually did was, he was also concerned about consciousness like Husserl, but the difference was he was trying to relate consciousness and objects in the outer world. So, we could see that it is an epistemological problem for Descartes. There is a subject pole and an object pole, or in the language of Richard Rorty, the famous American pragmatic philosopher, there is an inner space and an outer space. And during this age, philosophy was trying to redefine itself as epistemology, it has to discuss how objects in the world, or this is termed as quote unquote outer space, how this outer space is related to the inner space or consciousness or mind. So, this was the problem with Descartes, and Descartes was not concerned about saying what is the essence of consciousness. He is not at all concerned about this. He is rather concerned about the epistemological problem, how to get knowledge and all that, and he develops a methodology accordingly. So, he was not concerned about looking for the immanent, rather, as I mentioned, the problem was how to understand the world, how to get knowledge, and essences is always immanent. So, this is what Husserl, this is what has prompted Husserl to think about a new method which is different from the Cartesian contemplations, because the essences are immanent, we have to capture them. And now the natural attitude. I have already discussed this natural attitude in some previous episodes in detail, but I will have to discuss it briefly here to really place the concept of methodology in the framework of phenomenological thought. So, I revisit it briefly. Natural attitude, the world has spatio-temporal objects. So, this is a presupposition, the world is a world of spatio-temporal objects which is given to us, and they exist independent of our will, our wish and our perceiving it. So, this is a commonsensical attitude and which is part of the natural attitude. And again, ourselves and other selves are also part of this world. We consider all of us as part of this world, and then further the world, again this is not just a world of objects and facts, but it is also a world of values where we live, we interact with others, we relate with others and all that. So, there are, it is a world of values also. Again, our activities are directed at this world, because we are concerned about this world, we find ourselves in this world. So, all our activities are directed at this world, and now the real things independent of us which subsist in themselves and move around in space and time. So, this is the world, it is the world of real things independent of us. As I mentioned, it is independent of our conceiving and perceiving them. Then science, the domain of science also belongs to the broader framework of natural attitude. So, science accepts this world as taken for granted, science never questions its existence, substituting atoms, gravity etc., and so is part of a natural attitude. So, we could see that common sense, scientific attitude, all these belong to the broader framework of natural attitude, which Husserl is trying to overcome. Why? We will see that. So, here let us see some of the observations made by great thinkers who have got tremendously influenced by the philosophy of Edmund Husserl and phenomenology. This is Gadamer, Hans Georg Gadamer, the famous philosopher who is associated with philosophical hermeneutics. And what Gadamer says about the phenomenological method? Gadamer says that the sense of presuppositionless philosophy is that it insists a phenomenon should be compared not in terms of any extrinsic criteria, but in its own terms. So, you have to be concerned about phenomena in its own terms. So, let us recollect what Husserl had said. Husserl's contention is, Husserl always repeatedly asserts that we have to go back to things themselves. So, that is what here Gadamer mentions when he says it has to be compared not in terms of any extrinsic criteria, but in its own terms. So, capturing the essences. Now, this is another great philosopher, Martin Heidegger, German philosopher again, and he was the student of one of the celebrated students of Edmund Husserl, who started his career as a phenomenologist, but later on deviated and developed his own hermeneutic phenomenology. So, he says that it is very interesting, the Martin Heidegger writes this in his famous book Being and Time. Phenomenology is to let a thing show itself from itself the way in which it shows itself from itself. So, there is no reference to anything extrinsic to the thing, you have to go back to the things themselves. So, I hope that the statements made by these two great philosophers will really give us the sense in which Husserl tries to understand, or Husserl places the notion of essences and conceiving a methodology to capture these essences. Now, we will see the notion of phenomenological reduction. This is the methodology. It starts with, or with the assumption that the aim is to get at things in themselves, which I have already mentioned. As Husserl says, go back to things in themselves. And now, things, what are these things to which we have to go back? These things are whatever is given, what we see in consciousness, whatever is directly given, immediately given to the consciousness without any mediation. So, the object of phenomenological reduction or methodology is this, the things in themselves which are given directly to consciousness. Now, that which appears to our consciousness, again this is a kind of repetition explaining further what does it mean, not to capture, see, and here we should not confuse it with the Kantian noumena, because Kant has made a distinction between noumena and phenomena. Phenomena is something which, according to Kant, which we construct on the basis of the sensations, the sense data, or the sensations which we receive from external world. These sensations are further ordered by the conceptual categories which the mind has, and as a result we form knowledge about a world, or rather we get a picture about a world, and this is the phenomenal world. But beyond this phenomenal world, or underlying this phenomenal world, there is a world of nominal, there is a nominal world, world of reality, things in themselves. But just because Kant also calls it things in themselves, and Husserl also terms essences as things in themselves, we should not confuse them. It is not the Kantian things in themselves, or in other words, Husserl does not use the term or the phrase things in themselves in the sense Kant has used this, because Kantian noumena is unknowable. Kant was an agnostic in that sense, but Husserl is not. Husserl's noumena are knowable, they are the basis of all knowledge for that matter. And now, the aim is to capture the immanent pure phenomenon which is given to the consciousness. Now, we will see the immanent or the pure phenomena, what is it? So, here we refer to the indubitable absolute data, which is again I repeat directly given to the consciousness. Since they are immanent, since it is directly given to the consciousness, it is indubitable, we cannot doubt it. Does not, again it does not point to anything outside of itself, there is no reference to anything external to it, it is self contained. Again, what is intended is adequately given in itself, there should not be any mediation and it should be immediately given. So, this is what is meant by immanent phenomena. See, we have to see this notion of immanent phenomena by comparing it with the empiricistic or the positivistic conception of experience, where they talk about they introduce a concept of sense data to explain experience that is given to consciousness. But as far as the notion of sense data is concerned, the very idea of givenness is totally different. Now, pure phenomena, this immanent is beyond all epistemological question, because it is so certain, it is so indubitable that you do not have to doubt it at all. So, it is beyond all epistemological questions, and it is the essences, but not like the Platonic essences which are metaphysical. For example, for Plato the essences are metaphysical, they exist in a totally different world, in a abstract realm, but here essences do not exist somewhere else, but in consciousness, and they are real, but not like the Kantian noumena, because Kantian noumena are also real. For according to Kant, noumena represents the reality, they are the real, but different from the Kantian noumena. I have already explained the essences are real in a different sense. So, here it is phenomenology should not be confused with positivism, because positivism I just mentioned, positivism also deals with concepts like the given, directly given to the consciousness, sense data they talk about and all these things. But here the difference is that phenomenology looks for essences, unlike positivism. Positivism is just concerned about the data which is given. It is mere sense data which is the subject matter of positivism, but here there is a look for essences. Further, every sensible individual object possesses an essence or a pure eidos. This is what the basic contention of phenomenology. Every sensible individual object will have an essence, a pure essence, and phenomenology aims at possessing or getting that essence. Phenomenology is a science of essences in that way, an eidetic science. So, I am introducing the term eidetic science because it is concerned about essences, and it considers essential structures and not contingent facts for its object. See, for example, in science, sciences are concerned about facts, how the factual world functions, or sciences are broadly concerned about an explanation, providing an explanation to what happens in the factual world. But here it is not concerned about the facts which are contingent, but about the essential structures. Both sciences and phenomenology are concerned about the world, but here the concern is on the essential structures. Now, it is purely descriptive in nature to describe the essences that are directly given. That is the major function carried out by phenomenology. Now, how to achieve the eidos, the essences, that is the question. So, the whole question of phenomenological method is discussed in this part. See, here I have a quote from Kokelman's book. He says, a certain refraining from judgment which is compatible with the undoubted and indubitable conviction based on self evidence. This is required, this is presupposed by phenomenological method in order to achieve the eidos. We have to refrain from judgments. And what is this whole notion of refraining from judgment? This is something which we have to interrogate now. So, here it is obviously it refers to going beyond the natural attitude, because it is the judgment from which we are trying to refrain ourselves is a result of the natural attitude. Suspend the spatio-temporal world and focus on pure mental processes. You have to suspend it or put it in a bracket, keep it in abeyance, do not look at it right now, and focus on the pure mental processes that is directly given to you, and the phenomenological reductions. This is what is called phenomenological reduction, the process of bracketing, just now I have mentioned. See, for example, take this pen. This pen is made up of plastic, and the color, it has a particular color, a particular shape, various parts like this, this and all that. What is this pen? So, the fact that it is made up of plastic is irrelevant, and a particular shape this pen has, that is also irrelevant. To understand a pen, all these things are irrelevant aspects of it, but it is always in this a particular form and a particular color a pen comes to us, but these are all particularities. Phenomenology as a science is interested in the essence. What is the essence of the pen? Something without which the pen cannot exist. We cannot conceive the pen. We can conceive the pen without conceiving that it is made up of plastic, or the pen can be otherwise, very well otherwise, the color can be different, nothing will happen to the pen, but there are certain things, or there is something without which we cannot conceive it as a pen. That is the essence of the pen. So, the fact that it is made up of plastic, put it in a bracket. The fact that its color is grey or dark grey, put it in bracket. These are all unimportant, irrelevant aspects. So, we are putting them in brackets and keeping them in abeyance, and gradually narrowing our attention, focusing more and more, coming down to the essence of the pen, that which is given to the consciousness directly, without which we cannot conceive it. So, this is the aim of phenomenology. So, this process of bracketing or putting it in abeyance is called epoche. Now, to see the origin of our knowledge which has been lost sight of. See, for example, when I see this pen, I do not see the essence. what I see is I lost sight of it, the essence. The factors like this is a beautiful pen or the color, all such factors, all such properties of the pen will be attracting my attention, but that is not the important thing. I have lost sight of the important thing. Now, phenomenology is trying to recapture it. Again, the nature of method, neither empirical nor deductive. Empirical is the method used by sciences, where it employs experimentation, observation and all that, hypothesis formation and all that. So, these are the peculiarities of empirical method employed by natural sciences. And on the other hand, you have in mathematics the deductive method, but the method of phenomenology is different, consists of pointing to what is given and elucidating it, what is given directly. So, it is pointing towards that and trying to elucidate what is given, without which, I repeat, it cannot be conceived, and it neither explains by means of laws, that is what is happening in science, nor deduces from any principle, something which happens in deductive method in mathematics. So, it is different from all these. Again, it fixes, see, it fixes gaze directly upon whatever is presented to consciousness. So, in order to fix the gaze directly upon it, we have to bracket it, put it in epoche or perform the epoche, and what is known, doubted, loved, hated and so forth is focused, the essence of it is being focused. Now, we will focus more on phenomenological reduction. Here, exclude all that is not genuinely immanent from the sphere of absolute data. This is what I have mentioned, exclude all that is genuinely immanent from the sphere of absolute data, that which is not genuinely immanent, color of the pen, shape of the pen, the letters written upon it, all these are not genuinely immanent, they are all accidental features, contingent factors which we do not have to really worry about. Immanent refers to the adequately self given, it is given directly, self given, it is not dependent on anything else. And again, the process of defining the pure essence of a psychological phenomena. So, this is what is happening in the process of phenomenological reduction, defining the pure essence of a psychological phenomena, and empirical subjectivity also is suspended. So, these are the various processes. In the coming episode, we will see the various processes, various steps involved in the process of reduction, but roughly we will see it now that empirical subjectivity is suspended here. Now, again, is definitely influenced by Descartes, no doubt, because Cartesian method of doubt is, we could see the influence of this method, but only thing is that Husserl is taking a different direction, a different route. Cartesian negation, for example, of the general positing of the natural attitude, Descartes also does it, he also doubts whether what is given, the objects which are given in front of me, whether they are real or not, or am I hallucinating, or they are all something which is really not existing. All these are possibilities, we can genuinely doubt all that is given. So, this is the Cartesian method, and Descartes and Husserl is tremendously influenced by this, doubt everything then that can be doubted, this is what Descartes says. Now, bracketing, accomplished by a method of bracketing empirical data away from consideration. The empirical data, the color, shape, in the example of the pen I have cited. So, all these are kept away from the consideration, we are not eliminating them, we are just keeping them away, putting in them in bracket, bracketing empirical data away from further investigation. Now, what remains? What remains is pure consciousness. So, you have pure consciousness, since you have pure consciousness in front of you, you can see what is directly given to this pure consciousness. As I mentioned earlier, it is not a denial or a negation, as it simply plays things in abeyance, simply bracketing it, and as in mathematics we change the sign and give a different value to it, we often do that in mathematics, but we are not doing anything substantially changing the entire constellation of things, we are just putting it in abeyance, and its status as reality is what is suspended, so that we can attend, we can focus on the essences. Now, pure phenomena and the pure ego, see, this is the result of phenomenological reduction or phenomenological method. The residue, pure ego and pure phenomena are the residue, and bracketing empirical intuitions away from philosophical inquiry by refraining from making judgments upon them. So, even the scientific attitude, even scientific methodology is nothing but making judgments upon what is given. So, you are refraining yourself from these judgments which are already given. See, the fact that it is plastic is a scientific fact, plastic is a chemical. So, this is also bracketed, because to understand a pen you really need not know what plastic is, you really need not know what black color is, all these are contingent aspects. And the term epoche is used to refer to the suspension of judgment regarding the true nature of reality, just the process. And what does it mean? Epoche in Greek means cessation, just separating it, just putting it in bracket. Bracketing judgment is an epoche or suspension of inquiry, and whatever facts belong to essential being is placed in brackets. So, bracketing is a, we can see it is a neutralization of belief. We are just freeing ourselves from the beliefs we have, and we set aside everything that is external and the prejudices that we associate with the reality of the world. So, what is left? What is left is the sphere of consciousness, the sphere of mental processes, and phenomenological analysis is described as a study of what can be found immanently within the sphere of consciousness. So, this is the ultimate aim of phenomenology, to see it everything be perceived, remember, imagined, judge, feel, desire, will, etc. All these are being directly addressed, and we can concentrate only on the inner content of our conscious act. So, I repeat, what is remembered, what is imagined, what is perceived, all these are being addressed directly. The intuition of the content of consciousness, and distinguish the immanent object of the act from the actual object or the transcendental object. This is the purpose of phenomenological method. So, with this we will summarize this episode. This episode we have mainly discussed the following topics: the method of phenomenological reduction and the whole process of overcoming natural attitude. So, phenomenological reduction was the central theme of this episode. In the next episode also we will discuss this concept, but slightly in detail by describing, elucidating the various stages involved. Again, we have also discussed the notion of pure ego as a residue of reduction. Now, students can take up following questions: describe the relationship between the immanent object of perception and the object in the natural world. Here we have to refer to the natural attitude and overcoming of this natural attitude. Now, briefly explain the method of reduction. What is involved, or what are the aims of this reduction, and how does it proceed? So, these are what you are expected to write. With this we will wind up this episode. Thank you.